Good afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm your host, Paige Browning. Today we hear about the ballot initiative that targets girls who are transgender who want to play sports. That's in a few minutes. But first, here are today's top stories. It's Monday, June 8th. Things are not looking good for the Washington state budget. Over the weekend, Governor Bob Ferguson shared that state agencies are being directed to freeze program expansions and start identifying cuts immediately. Officials are calling it Washington's most challenging budget in recent memory. Ferguson says he doesn't know yet the size of the 2027 to 29 budget shortfall, but says it will be significant. But he says he won't raise taxes when he releases his proposed budget in December. Our other top stories today come from the arts and entertainment worlds. One good news, one bad. First, the Crocodile music venue in Seattle has new national owners today, and the news comes with a welcome announcement for fans. Its two sibling venues will reopen. Today, the Crocodile announced that the national holding company, the Comedy Tent, has successfully bought into the venue. They join existing investors in the organization. The venue is keeping its existing staff and plans to reopen the smaller Madame Lou's and Hereafter venues. The Crocodile opened in Seattle's Belltown neighborhood in 1991, but last year the owners shuttered part of the operations due to financial constraints. The Comedy Tent includes investors involved with comedy's Upright Citizens Brigade and the former CEO of The Onion. Now, the bad locally. Seattle may have just lost one of its most decorated and beloved athletes, Hillary Knight, captain of the Seattle Torrent. Sources say the hockey forward and five-time Olympian is getting traded. The Professional Women's Hockey League has yet to confirm the deal, but sources told the AP that Knight is leaving the Seattle Torrent to join the brand new Detroit expansion team. Knight wrapped up the Torrent's own inaugural season in the spring. Then she indicated she wanted to stay in Seattle.
Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. This is the most special place to play. We're going to come back bigger, better, and stronger for y'all next year, but thank you for an amazing start.
The Torrent have already lost 3 starting players to trades this offseason before Knight. Knight's one of the most decorated players in the history of women's hockey and just captained Team USA to Olympic gold. There is a whole lot of news going on in Seattle. For one, residents are about to move into Seattle's first big shelter, funded by Mayor Katie Wilson's administration. Scott Greenstone has more.
The mayor hosted the opening of a tiny house shelter in Interbay yesterday, 75 shed-sized homes called pallet shelters on a gravel lot. But Wilson addressed that she's fallen short on her campaign promise of 500 shelter beds by the World Cup.
So when people say, is it failure not to have created 500 units by now? What I want to say is, as long as there are thousands of people sleeping unsheltered on our streets, yes, we are failing.
Shelter providers who also spoke praised the speed at which the mayor's office set up this project, and the mayor called it among the fastest in Seattle history. More tiny house villages and RV parking lots are planned for later in the summer, some of which were already funded before Wilson took office. Scott Greenstone, KUOW News.
We'll stick with Scott for a moment to talk about another Wilson initiative. She's turning on a system of newly installed surveillance cameras only during the World Cup. Today, he asked Wilson, what happens after?
Last year, when Katie Wilson was campaigning for mayor, she urged the council not to expand a system of surveillance cameras. But this year, after taking office, Wilson installed around 24 in the Stadium District. She said they wouldn't be turned on unless there was evidence of a, quote, credible threat. And then Friday, she said they would be turned on during the World Cup, then turned off afterward.
It's like an intensely political issue in a sense, but I'm really trying to approach it in as non-political a way as possible and just really think through, like, what are the actual impacts on people's lives.
Wilson is looking to a forthcoming audit to figure out whether immigration authorities can easily access footage from these cameras. When I asked what happens if the audit says they're not secure, she said she doesn't have a good answer at the moment, but she's not planning to uninstall them after the World Cup. Scott Greenstone, KUOW News.
The Seattle Arab Festival has canceled its 2026 event, citing the instability in the Middle East. In an announcement over the weekend, event leaders said that proceeding with their annual cultural celebration would not align with the spirit and purpose of the festival. This comes as the U.S. and Israel fight a war against Iran, and fighting has broken out in surrounding nations. Festival leaders say it's not possible to be a space for joy. They plan to continue the event in 2027. To environment news today, as Washington state officials make progress on the environmental response to the deadly Longview chemical disaster, one tribal government's raising concerns over the long-term effects on the Columbia River. Alejandro Figueroa reports.
Emergency response crews say they are done flushing a drainage system near the Longview Nippon Mill. That's after a massive tank failed and released thousands of gallons of a chemical called white liquor into the nearby ditches that drain into the Columbia River. The Warren Springs Tribes is asking regulators for transparency over the effect the chemical could have on the river. Britton Ransford is with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife.
High pH materials like white liquor that may have entered the Columbia River system is diluted to a level that's not considered in danger for fish and wildlife.
So far, officials have collected almost 3,000 dead fish from the ditch system, though there are no reported fish mortalities on the Columbia River.
That was Alejandro Figueroa reporting. We'll stay on the water for this final news story. Officials with the U.S. Coast Guard are preparing for an increase in international boat visits for the FIFA World Cup. KNKX's Anna Marie Yanni has this story.
Lieutenant Commander Ian McPhillips is with the Coast Guard.
I really do think they are coming from all over the world.
In Seattle's Lake Union, the team is preparing anchorage areas and coordinating with pilots and port staff to accommodate the visitors. He says lakegoers can help by giving large vessels extra space.
I think boaters in the area are actually very good at being responsible in this area because it's so busy and there's just follow those same standard practices we all do.
The Coast Guard only gets a few days' notice when foreign boats are arriving, so the agency doesn't have a true estimate of how many vessels will show up. When large boats do arrive, the city's drawbridges will be active, meaning congested waterways could also lead to congested traffic. I'm Anna Marie Yanni reporting.
Now, our feature story today. For nearly 20 years, Washington state schools have let all students play on sports teams that align with their gender identity. But that could change if voters approve a ballot measure this fall. The measure would ban girls who are transgender from playing girls' sports. And doctors would have to verify a student's birth sex before they could join a team. State government reporter Sarah Mises-Tan spoke with KUOW's Kim Malcolm to explain what this proposal would do.
Sarah, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
So tell us who is behind this initiative and why they say they want to make this change.
Yeah, so the measure was brought by the conservative PAC Let's Go Washington. It's backed by hedge fund manager Brian Haywood. He's the money man behind a number of initiatives over the past few years. He believes he's seeing a rise in transgender girls participating and winning in girls' sports. He wants this initiative to block transgender girls from joining girls' sports teams. He says it's a matter of safety and fairness.
It's at the expense of female athletes and the safety, I would argue, as well. So I think it needs to be clarified. This is not okay. Boys are welcome to play in whatever sport they want within the confines of their biological teams.
The Washington Interscholastic Athletic Association, which oversees middle and high school sports, told me that they know of only about 10 transgender athletes who compete in sports across the state. That's out of 200,000 student athletes statewide.
Right. So a very small number is what we're talking about here. I'll just note that this controversy is kind of bubbling up after a trans girl won consecutive state titles in girls track last year. So this kind of example might be driving some parts of this debate. Sarah, can you tell us a bit more about what kind of change this initiative could create if it ends up passing?
It would reverse a 2007 policy that lets students play on sports teams that align with their gender identity. To do that, the initiative says that kids would have to get a doctor to verify their sex at birth. Right now, students don't have to do this to play sports, so it would be a major change to school sports policy in the state.
So how does someone verify their birth sex? Would these kids have to show their birth certificate?
Actually, the initiative doesn't say anything about a birth certificate, but it does list 3 options for how birth sex could be confirmed by a doctor. It says students can get a hormone test to measure testosterone levels in the blood, or they could have a lab test done to check their chromosomes, or a doctor can confirm their reproductive anatomy. Most doctors have told us on both sides of the initiative that this would mean, in real terms, a genital exam, which is a fancy way of saying that doctors would look at the reproductive area of a student for a couple seconds and then write down female or male. There aren't a lot of details spelling this out in the initiative. It just says, here are these 3 options. But again, none of these options are required to join a sports team right now. And the testosterone and chromosome tests I mentioned are a lot more complicated and expensive to obtain. So some believe that a genital exam would be the most likely method of verification if this initiative were to pass.
Sarah, this sounds like this could possibly put doctors in a complicated position.
Yeah, I think it probably will. There is a lot of discussion right now about whether doctors who regularly see patients could kind of, quote unquote, back reference their prior annual exams, where a genital exam was a part of that, in order to fill out the physical form and check off that male or female box based on, what they saw at previous exams or what they know about that student previously, or if a doctor really does need to go through all the aspects of the physical in that moment. So that would mean having to confirm a student's gender at that exam. I think it's unclear in the initiative if that is required. I've spoken with doctors on both sides of this who were not clear about how exactly that implementation would look. I think it's anyone's guess how they may actually go about confirming birth sex.
A lot of questions still, evidently. Sarah, you did mention that this issue is going to be on the ballot in November. What can voters expect this fall?
Yeah, so this initiative has already qualified for the November ballot. So voters across the state will get a chance to weigh in on this proposal in the fall. They'll also see a second initiative from Brian Haywood and Let's Go Washington. That one is about parents' ability to request school records for their kids. And there might even be a third initiative. Haywood and Let's Go Washington are currently collecting signatures for one to try and repeal the state's new income tax on households that earn over $1 million a year. State Democrats call that one the millionaire's tax.
State government reporter Sarah Mises-Tan talking with KUOW's Kim Malcolm. Sarah also spoke to the group opposing this initiative, No Hate in Washington State, which includes nurses, mental health experts, teachers, domestic violence prevention groups, and others. You can read more of her story on our website, KUOW.org. Next time on Seattle Now, rentable scooters are very popular in Seattle, but riding one can also be dangerous.
Scooter riders are disproportionately young, are disproportionately male, are disproportionately getting injured late at night. Broadly stereotyping, in the injury world, men are more likely to do dumb things that get them injured. So people who are injured are also disproportionately male.
We'll talk about what city officials and Lime are doing to make it safer Tuesday morning. That's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Brooklyn Jamerson Flowers. I'm Paige Browning. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. Hope your week is off to a great start. We'll see you later.